Hello, how are you doing?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, it's nice to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, I want to talk rock and roll with you, blues music. I know you're a fan of Muddy Waters, who has inspired the countless number of classic rock bands. So
Yeah,
excited to chat with you. But also, I wanted to congratulate you on your latest song, World on Fire.
cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about you wrote it and recorded it in Brazil, correct?
Yeah, we did a tour over there about 12 months ago, and that kind of came from my drummer Felipe. He's from Brazil, so he set it all up and used promoters that he knew from back when he lived in Brazil. And yeah, I still didn't believe that I was actually going to tour Brazil until we were getting on the plane at Heathrow and flying over there, and it was an incredible experience. And whilst we were over there, we got offered some studio time right at the end of the tour. So yeah, we basically spent 2 days in the studio and yeah, recorded this track. We actually wrote it on the tour as well. So we were using the riff as something in sound checks really. And then yeah, when we were in the studio, it came together and it was really cool. And we had a really good time doing it.
Yeah, it's beautiful down there. Which city were you in?
Well, we were all over the place to be
Oh,
honest.
okay.
But yeah, I mean one of the best things about being in Brazil was, and this is something I'd not encountered before really, was the distance between places.
I know,
Because
right? It's such a
uh,
big country.
yeah, I mean yeah, the UK in comparison is absolutely. We would moan about travelling from here to Newcastle. I'm London based, and then going to Newcastle, which is only about 3.5 hours away, and that was the start of the journey when we were in Brazil. But yeah, we were based basically in Belo Horizonte, so yeah, it was quite a cool little apartment we were staying in for most of the tour, and then we were sort of using that as the base, and then going to different places from there.
Awesome. Yeah. The riff on that song is killer. I can't wait for people to hear it. It's got like a 70s heavy metal vibe. I really dig it.
Yeah, I mean, well, my band are massive Black Sabbath fans. I'm a big
That
Sabbath fan,
explains it.
and we've always been trying to get towards that sort of space where we've got more Sabbath in the songs. And I think the next album, when people eventually hear it, they'll hear the Sabbath influence. And Tony Iommi's been a massive influence on me in terms of songwriting. So yeah, I think it's a cool riff that originally was going to be a lot slower, which probably would have made it sound even more Sabbathy. But Lucas Sagat's the Brazilian producer who worked on the record. He was like, let's just speed it up a little bit and get it a bit more, get it a bit more banging. So it's worked out pretty well.
Very cool. And so the new album is titled The Hammer Falls. Can you talk a little bit about the meaning behind the title?
Yeah, well, the new album was actually going to be called World on Fire. So
Ah.
we wrote that song, and I was like, oh, we should call the album that. And I think Felipe was like, oh, well, Slash has already got an album called World on Fire. And I was like, oh, no one cares. But then that was before coronavirus and before the pandemic. So we recorded this track and we were working on it right at the start of this year. And then yeah, it felt like that wasn't the right title for the album in reflection of what was going on.
Mm.
So we had various different other titles that came to play, and then there's another track that we've recorded for the album that's called The Hammer Falls, and I was like, that's a good song title, but it's an even better album title. So I think it lends itself to a lot of visuals as well, because I like artwork. That's a big thing for me in terms of albums. Is like when I think about my favorite albums like Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti, and that artwork is a really important thing. So we've got a great artist called Jack Brown, and he's going to create a really cool piece of artwork for us for the album cover. And I just think it's a bit like this year for a lot of people has been. It's like there's a moment of reflection for a lot of people, and it's almost like this is an awful situation, but it's also allowed people a sort of stopgap where people can reflect on their lives and perhaps shift things into a better scenario. And maybe that's what the title means to me, really, is it's like, yeah, stuff's going wrong, but it's kind of like a chance to start afresh and start anew.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it definitely, for me personally, it's given me a new perspective on life and taking the concept of time and, realizing, you have to live in the moment more and, not take things for granted as much.
Well, when this all kicked off, we were in the middle of a tour. We'd started the sort of European tour for my last album, Who Feeds the Wolf, and we were about 10 dates in. And I remember we were in like a hotel lobby, chatting to the guys and saying that we're meant to be in Edinburgh in 2 days, and then Newcastle, and then Leeds, and we had all these dates booked. And then we're supposed to be going to Spain and then Russia, and I was like, do you think this is going to happen? And then we were kind of like, let's, we'll be strong. We're going to carry on. And then like 2 days later, we got a call from the Edinburgh venue saying, look, we don't think this is going to happen. So that didn't happen. And then it was all on the same day. Everything just kind of fell apart. And then I guess about 3 or 4 days later, that was when Boris, our Prime Minister, announced that we were going into lockdown. So it was really, really kind of crazy. So I was on the road with my guys, playing shows, meeting people, having an absolutely amazing time. And then a week later, I was at home like, what the hell do I do now? So it was a strange moment for us as musicians to have to do that. But yeah, it's been a crazy year.
Exactly. I know. I know everyone's dying for live music again. Things just to go back to normal. Yeah,
I think it's, as a musician, obviously I love performing. That's a really key part of my life. But I like going to shows as well. And when I'm not on tour, I tend to go into central London, go to gigs and hang out with friends that are within the industry. And I've really missed that as well. And I've missed, actually, one of my favorite things is kind of like the pre-show hangout at a bar where I see all my mates and we all just talk, you talk a load of crap about the industry and whatnot. And it's a good way of sort of feeling part of a community. And to not have that has been really weird for me.
Have you been able to pick up a different, hobby or in the meantime? Or is it all been writing or?
Well, there's two things that I've really filled my time with. I mean, I've done a lot of songwriting. I mean, I've worked on a new album. I've got enough songs now for probably a whole other project, which is going to be a sort of acoustic Americana type record that I'm thinking of doing next year. But outside the music, I've done a lot of drawing. So I've been an artist for years, but over the last 2 or 3 years, because of the touring schedules, I've just not really been doing much visual art. And so it's been really good fun to get back into that. And I make these abstract drawings that are the polar opposite to the way I play live, where I'm just letting loose. It's kind of this crazy sort of release of energy. Whereas the way I make artwork is very controlled, and I actually make microscopic marks on sheets of paper using a magnifying glass. And so having that space and time, because it's very time consuming to make these little artworks, has been really good fun. And it's kind of made me reconnect with another part of myself that has probably been shut off for a little while. So that, and I've also been doing loads of exercise, which has been good because, years of touring, I think actually when I came off the road in March, I was like, this has really taken its toll on my body. So I had a bit of a break from booze and had, I got into running, which has been really good fun as well. So, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll try to design some of your artwork for your albums?
You know what? I've always kept it quite separate. I think there's a possibility that I will. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know why I've never created my own artwork. I guess I've always wanted to sort of separate that element of my creative mind from the music. And yeah, like I say, the music for me is such a, one of my favorite musicians and bands is Neil Young and Crazy Horse, and that kind of hypnotic groove that they get into. I guess that there's a similarity there with the way I make drawings, in that it's repetitive mark making. And when you hear, one of my favorite Neil Young albums, Psychedelic Pill, where they play, like the opening track is like 30 minutes of them just on one chord, and that's kind of how I made drawings. And so there is some resemblance there, but yeah, we'll see in the future. The thing is that the artworks are so small that you stick it on an album cover and it just looked like the Beatles' White Album. It would just be like a blank sheet. So
Right.
I don't know.
It might not suit, you know, the music that you're making.
No, not really.
Well, going back to your influences, I heard you say you were a fan of Muddy Waters when you were younger. Like growing up, you would listen to blues like Muddy Waters and B.B. King, while your friends would listen to Britpop.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, Muddy Waters influenced so many bands like AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, of course, where they got their name. So can you talk a little bit about, you know, what kind of drew you to Muddy Waters and blues music?
Well, I think if you listen to, yeah, like you mentioned AC/DC just there, if you listen to a lot of the early AC/DC stuff, the blues influence is really, really apparent. The same with Zeppelin. You know, maybe Zeppelin were more open about discussing their influences. I don't know. I discovered blues kind of through those bands, and the same with the Stones. You know, my dad was a massive Stones fan when we were kids, and we used to listen to a lot of Rolling Stones records in the car when he was driving us around to football practice or whatever it might be. And I think as I got into my teenage years, I sort of wanted to discover where those artists' influences had come from. So, you know, just this, I guess this was kind of, like the pre-internet days, I guess. So it wasn't like I could just go online and look this stuff up. So I had to, I bought, there was this Led Zeppelin book I got that was basically going through the influences of each track. And it was a really great little book that I got for Christmas, I think, off my mum. So it would talk about, where that riff, how many more times had sort of originated, and Whole Lot of Love. And, it just became this really fun exercise of, I can go down to the local record store and trawl through the blues albums and find a Muddy Waters album and listen to it. And it was kind of like this magic moment where you're like, oh my God, that's where they got that riff from. And so then it just leads to another thing. So then you start with like Muddy Waters and Elmore James and then B.B. King. Charlie Patton became a massive influence on me when I was a teenager as well. And one thing that I found really interesting was, I'd listen to Eddie Van Halen, for instance, and you think, oh my God, Eruption is insane. How do you play that? But then try and play some Charlie Patton, because it's just as difficult. It's just on an acoustic guitar. Robert Johnson, it sounds like there's 3 guitar players playing on some of his tracks, and it's just one guitarist. So I think a lot of those old blues guys, people don't realize how tricky it is to really play like that. And, I've played in blues bands for years, and I ran a blues jam in central London for 3 or 4 years. And a lot of people try to play like those musicians, but having the sort of soul and that inner kind of authenticity, it's difficult to recreate. And yeah, it doesn't always come off.
There's times where I heard like a blues song and I'm like, oh, this sounds very familiar. And then I would find out that it was later sampled in a well-known song. And I'm like, oh, I had no idea,
Yeah, I mean, you obviously then get it with Led Zeppelin. So it's a case of things like When the Levee Breaks, the amount of times that drum part has been sampled by artists. And a lot of the time, this music just passes down through generations. And I guess that's kind of where I see, a lot of my peers on the scene at the moment, the sort of contemporary classic rock bands, whether that makes sense, contemporary classic rock, but contemporary rock bands. And there's an importance for me to tell people about blues music and keep that genre alive. And, I'm from a small town in the northwest of England called Burnley. I don't know if there's an authentic blues sort of, how do I put this? Like, to be authentic and play blues and be, a lad from Burnley, I don't know whether that quite sits right, but everybody can have the blues no matter what. It just is it's a feeling, isn't it, within you, that in the same way that good music it's non-genre specific. It's about whether it affects you and touches you in an emotional way, and that's what blues does to me. And in the same way that Eddie Van Halen emotionally affects me in terms of his guitar playing. So it's all part of the same pool. It's just, you know, what you're taking from it, I guess.
Exactly. And is there a riff, like listening to your music, you come up with these amazing riffs. So I'm curious, is there one specific guitar riff that you listen to and you're like, wow, I wish I came up with that?
Yeah, I think my favorite all-time riff is actually Heartbreaker by Zeppelin. And it's just because I remember, I've got this really distinct memory of hearing that for the first time when I was getting into guitar, and I was going for guitar lessons, and I absolutely hate guitar lessons. I hated being told what to do, and I think that's still how I feel to this day. I don't like being told what to do. But with guitar lessons, it was like the guy who was teaching me was trying to teach me how to play classical guitar, and I hated it. And then one of my mates' dads had got the Led Zeppelin box set that came out in the early 90s, which was the one with the it's like a cornfield on the front and the sort of shadow of the Zeppelin going over. And he lent me this 4 CD box set, and he put on Heartbreaker, and he said, I want you to learn this track. And I remember hearing it, just like the tone on that guitar is just absolutely amazing. The whole track is amazing, but that intro riff, and to this day, I still play it. I played it the other day, actually. I was jamming along with some of the remastered Zeppelin stuff, and I was like, I'll play along with Heartbreaker. And so it's one of the first rock songs I learned to play on guitar. I just think it's a riff that sort of swings, and it's got a bit of attitude. You know, there's a lot of riffs that are just kind of like, bleh, whereas this, it sort of lumbers into, you know, it's like something coming over the horizon that's gonna, you know, punch you in the face, and it certainly does that.
Oh yeah, Led Zeppelin, they have so many songs that really get me pumped up.
Yeah, I mean, I could name, I don't know, 15, 20 Zeppelin tracks. I think, you know, most of Black Dog, I mean, Rock and Roll, I don't know, When the Levee Breaks is great, Kashmir, Custard Pie, like they've got so many great songs and great riffs that for any young guitarists out there wanting to learn guitar and get into sort of classic rock, I'd just start with Zeppelin. And some of the riffs are relatively simple to play as well. Like maybe that's why they've got an impact, because they're not overcomplicated. They've got groove, you know.
Yeah, like the Immigrant Song. That's one song that I wish was a little bit longer. It's too short.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's I used to play that song in a band. I was in a metal band when I was in my late teens, and we did Immigrant Song. I wasn't the singer in that band, by the way. This is funny because I actually ended up being a singer through default, because I was in bands with singers who just kept not showing up for gigs, and then it was like you'd have gigs and it'd be like, well, we need someone to sing, so I'd better get on stage and do it. Trying to do Immigrant Song is hard, so you know, I haven't got the same pipes as Robert Plant, but it's a brilliant tune.
Yeah, I don't think many people do.
No, well, yeah, it's just incredible, isn't it? Great tone.
Yeah. I don't know, I feel like the UK just has so many great rock bands. I don't know, there's something in the water there.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's because it's so grim here. The weather's so bad that you kind of, you know, there's not much else to do sometimes. You just want to be, like a lot of my teenagers, I just spent in my bedroom playing guitar, because it was like, I don't really want to go outside because it's just raining. So I think, yeah, there's obviously a really strong heritage of quality music acts that have come from the UK. I did a thing on my Facebook fan group the other day, which is just discussing people's favourite frontmen and women in rock and music in general. And, you know, a lot of the names that came up were, you know, British frontmen, and most of my favourite musicians are from this country, and I don't know why that is. I mean, you know, we mentioned these AC/DC. I mean, they're actually from Scotland, so it's kind of like, you know, it's sort of yeah, something is clearly in the water over here. That, yeah, maybe it's just because it's so bloody grim that we want to play rock and roll instead.
I guess so. But hey, I'm not mad at that. I'm loving it.
No.
I just feel like I need to move to the UK so I can see all these bands live.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, isn't it? At the moment, we're all kind of stuck, raring to go. I mean, we've done some shows over the last 6 or 7 months, which have been really good fun, and it was a bit weird because we haven't been. There's a period where we couldn't rehearse or anything like that, so we did the first show having not played together for like 3 months, but it was all right. You know, we kind of. I think there were a few moments where we were all looking at each other like, but yeah, I think there is a lot of great music coming out at the moment, and it's just a shame that people can't go out to the gigs like they were doing 12 months ago, because it felt like there was a real wave happening actually 12 months ago. It felt pretty, you know, there's some great bands that have come out, like Massive Wagons, Those Damn Crows, real killer bands that are producing new songs, and it's like a contemporary twist on a well-trodden path, I guess. It's kind of like what we're trying to do. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're taking a sound and a way of playing and trying to put a bit of a contemporary spin on things. But I think the biggest thing is that a lot of these bands know how to write choruses, and I think that's what you want. You want to see people at packed venues singing along with massive choruses on songs, and it is just a shame that we can't do it right now. But it will come back, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, well, my hope is that a lot of people will flock to the venues and, you know, support these bands even more so than before.
Yeah, I mean, what's it like over in the States at the moment? Because obviously we're very separate to that, and it's, you know, what's the situation where you are?
Yeah, there's no live music at the moment, which is, you know, kind of strange because gyms have reopened and restaurants are open. So it's kind of like, I feel like they could find a way to safely have bands perform while people are eating or drinking. But for some reason, live music is at a standstill at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to the cinema a few times, which has been really cool. But you sit there and think, well, how can I be in this venue watching a film with all these people and not be able to go to see a live show, even if it's a reduced capacity?
Exactly,
And
yeah.
that started up again, but like we went over to France about a month ago. Played this great venue just sort of south of Calais, and the reason it was really great was it was a theatre venue, so you could fit a lot of people into that space and still maintain the social distancing. So you had gaps in between, essentially bubbles of people, and that was great. And I think the unfortunate situation is you get a lot of the venues in the UK that are not designed to handle audiences like that. You know, some of the places that I go to watch bands in London that are club venues where you're used to all being crammed in there with your mates having a beer, sweaty rock and roll venues, they're not suited to everybody sat down, being polite and watching a live band like it's a theatre performance, I guess. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all develops over the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, I'm just hoping, you know, cities can kind of brainstorm a safe way to allow live music to happen again, whether it's, you know, having a specific capacity and, like you said, find a way to space people out so they're not packed together.
Yeah,
That's just my hope.
We want everybody to be safe. You know, that I was fully aware that when we went to do this show over in France, that I went to get a COVID test. The band went to get COVID tests before we went over there, because I was saying, like, we're getting up in front of people. We want to make sure that we're you know, we're not going to pass anything on to them. And then when we came back, we had to quarantine for 2 weeks. So, you know, they're just the procedures that you have to go through. And the last thing I want is for one of my fans to come to a show and get ill. I mean, that would be horrible. So
Right.
as much as we're missing playing, we want everybody to enjoy themselves, because this is what rock music for me, rock and roll music is about. it's a release, isn't it? There's enough crap goes on in your life that when you go to see a rock and roll show, you want to leave all that behind, and you want to just have an evening where you're having fun with your mates and you can have a blast. And so we want live music back, but it's got to be in the right circumstances. Yeah.
Yeah, so at the moment, all we can do is wait things out and wait for things
Write
to
some
improve.
songs. This is, I've chatted to a lot of musicians who are like, "Oh God, I can't play any gigs," and it's like, "Well, we'll write some songs then." Like, I still play my guitar every day. I was saying to my drummer the other day, because we were talking about how we both play our instruments at home, because generally we're playing so many gigs that we're not really at home practicing or anything like that. And I was like, well, I just practice. I play in my living room like I'm on stage in front of 1,000 people. And Felipe was like, really? And I was like, yeah, man, like, why not? I stand there and play, and it's an energy release for me as well. It's kind of like, particularly in that quarantine period for 2 weeks, I was like, on like a Saturday night, I'm in front of this massive audience of people in France, being a rock and roll star, and then on Monday I was like watching Netflix, like, oh my God, I'm inside for 14 days, and it's like, okay, well, I'll just set up my Marshall cabinets and then just pretend like I'm on tour anyway. So play along to Heartbreaker.
Hey, you gotta have fun somehow.
Yeah, well, I completed Netflix after about 2 months of lockdown, so it's like I need to find something new to do.
What were you watching?
Oh God, I've watched so much stuff. I think the last thing I watched actually was Cobra Kai. It's the new Karate Kid sequel. I watched that.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet. Is it good, or is it
It's
cheesy?
good, yeah. It's so cheesy, yeah, but I like the sort of cheesy 80s rock music that's in it, which because that was one of my favorite films when I was a kid. So yeah, I was enjoying that during the quarantine period, and I started rewatching The Sopranos. Yeah, I've just and this is another thing actually. We've just started rewatching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So this is what musicians are doing in like 2020 now. It's like I tell you, my year that all went out the window was like UK tour, Spain, Russia, Brazil, France, Switzerland. It was like this insane tour that was going to be incredible. And then I was saying to the guys when we went to France, I was like, well, it's been slightly delayed, and this is our only European date of the second half of this year. But we've watched a lot of TV.
Well, yeah, reliving the past, I guess, through Netflix, because they're adding all
Yeah.
these old shows, and it's like, I feel like I'm reliving my childhood.
Well, I think it's like what I'm saying about music. It's an escape, isn't it? Because you turn on the TV and everything is just so awful at the moment that we've had a lot of messages from people over the last 6 months. We've put out a lot of music. We recorded an album in lockdown, and we had that mixed in Brazil. And it's been kind of heartwarming to sort of get these messages from people who have been really affected by music. And I have had those sorts of messages previously, but not in the same way. Like people saying, well, listening to this song that you wrote really got me through this. And that's really nice because, I write songs and record them and then we take them on the road. But to get personal messages, I had one a couple of weeks ago. I wrote a song for my last album, which was about my dad who had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia. And it's a thing that has affected a lot of people. And one of the hardest things in the last 6 months is that I've not been able to go to visit him. They've been in lockdown. They were open for like 4 days, and then somebody got a positive test and they had to shut down again. So I've been doing these like weekly private gigs for him on Zoom or Facebook, just playing acoustic, and I just play Guns N' Roses tracks and all of his favorite Stone songs and things like that. But I got a few messages from people about this song "I Will Follow You" that I wrote for him, and it's affected people. And if music can be that escape for people at the moment, then that's an absolutely amazing thing for me. And it's weird because it has emotionally sort of touched me that people can feel that way about that stuff I've written. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, because the song was something personal to you, but the fact that it also touched other people, yeah, I can only imagine how great that feels.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because that song, I found it. I've always found it quite hard to play live, just because it sort of just affects me a lot to sing it. And we did it in France last month, and it was a bit weird. It was like this sort of well of emotion, and all this stuff that had built up about the last sort of 6 months. And yeah, it was a real struggle to perform it. But you know, that's when you write a song, you want to affect people, and you want people to go on that journey with you. And so if people take a positive from it, then that's a really cool thing.
That's good. Well, is there anything else you want to say about the upcoming album?
Yeah, so so this single "World on Fire" is coming out on the 13th of November, which is a kind of like precursor to the album. So we've done we've recorded a lot of the tracks, and we're sort of about 60% through, I think. And then as soon as that single comes out, the following week we're back in the studio at Momentum Studios down in Devon, and we're going to finish off the material. So the aim is to get the album out. I'm aiming for a March release, but yeah, we just have to see how things go in terms of how the coronavirus impacts stuff. But World on Fire, I'm really proud of that song. I hope people dig it. I hope they don't feel like that title is in any way sort of out. I was worried about the title a little bit, because I thought, are people going to feel like I'm capitalizing on the situation at the moment? But that's not what the situation is with it. I just think it's a badass single. I think it's got a great middle eight. It's got a great guitar solo and a chorus that is designed for festivals and that sort of thing. So fingers crossed by next summer, we'll be back out playing these songs to an audience. And the new album is very much of a similar vein to World on Fire. I think some of my other albums have been a real mix of different material, where you've got like the first 3 songs sound like Blackberry Smoke meets AC/DC, and then you have a couple of tracks that are like acoustic blues, and then there's a ballad, then there's more rock, and it as a cohesive unit. I don't think I've released an album yet that's as good as this current one. I think we've got 10 songs that it's like sod the slow songs, sod the ballads, let's just have 10 tracks that people can rock out to. And it sounds really good to me. So hopefully everyone else will think the same.
Very cool. Well, I know for myself, I'm excited to hear the rest of the album.
Cool.
Based on the first single.
Yeah. Well, I'll make sure you get an advance copy when it's ready.
Oh, thank you.
I've got a question to ask you, actually.
Absolutely.
What are the figures that I can see on the desk behind you?
Oh, okay. So these were a gift from a friend, because I'm a big, massive Queen fan. So this is a Freddie Mercury figure.
Brilliant.
Where you can like move his body and stuff. And then these are pop dolls of Brian May and Freddie Mercury.
Wicked. When I mentioned about the best front man thing on my Facebook, Freddie obviously came out as number 1 for most people. Yeah, phenomenal. It's funny you've got those toys, because I collect a lot of toys, and I've got like it's actually in the other room, but I've got a Jimmy Page one, I've got a Slash figure, I've got an Angus Young one, and when I bought them, they were like really cheap. But I've seen on eBay like the Jimmy Page one's going for like £300 now. So I said to the guys, I was like, we can't tour, we can't earn any money, I'm gonna have to sell all my toys. And it's like, oh dear.
That would suck if you had to do that.
Absolutely.
This is a pretty cool gift someone gave me. It's a Brian May Red Special pedal.
Oh wow.
But it's a shame that I I'm still trying to learn guitar. It's a shame I can't really use it that much because I'm still a beginner. But it's right now it's a decoration.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think, yeah, that's actually one of my fondest memories about discovering guitar. You know, I talked about Heartbreaker earlier on, Zeppelin. Another one was going on a family holiday, and my dad had got the Queen Live at Wembley album, and we listened to that bloody album like relentlessly on the holiday, and trying to work out how Brian May did the Brighton Rock solo, you know, with all the delay stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I did a like work experience thing as a teenager in a guitar shop in Burnley. And I remember this guy who was in charge said, "Oh, you know, I want you to go through these guitars, and you can test them out through this rig." And this rig had a delay unit on it, and I'd never used the delay unit, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's making me sound like Brian May," you know, a really bad version of Brian May. But yeah, that's just phenomenal and really inspirational stuff from that album for me. And yeah, I need to. That's something I've not done in lockdown actually, is rewatch the Queen film that came out, which was absolutely amazing. I've
Bohemian Rhapsody. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good film.
No, like Rami Malek, he really did his homework when portraying Freddie Mercury, because that's not an easy task to do, to step in those shoes.
He is Freddie, and the geezer that played Brian May as well.
He looks just like him.
I don't know if you get this in the US, but there's a program here called Midsummer Murders, right? Which is, it's such a weird show, and he's in that. The guy that plays Brian May, he's kind of like the main detective's assistant. And this program is like, it's like a village in the English countryside that has the most deaths per mile. It's just insane. But
wow.
He's in that, and he's very good in that. But when you see him in that, you would never imagine that he would be Brian May. And yeah, I went to Rockfield actually, where obviously they recorded. And yeah, an amazing experience to go to Rockfield Studios when I was looking at studios to record my next album. We're not recording at Rockfield, but maybe we will at some point in the future. It'd be a phenomenal experience to go there. It's like this sort of musical heritage, isn't it? But yeah, maybe that's what I'll do tonight after I've had a chat with you, to watch the Queen film.
No, it's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, of course they kind of had to Hollywoodize the film by moving around the order of events. Like, there are some historical discrepancies, but overall it's a great film.
I think that, you know, one of my favourite films is Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash film, and they obviously tinkered a little bit with the historical accuracies on stuff, but it's a great film. And I think that, you know, people kicked up a fuss about what happened with the Queen film, but it makes for a really, really catchy 2 hours. I mean, I know the order was completely out of particularly that final sort of 20 minutes and the various events that were portrayed, but it's a brilliant film, brilliant performances. And yeah, I look forward to watching it again anyway.
Yeah, the funny thing is, after that film came out, I started hearing Queen everywhere in Boston, but before the film, you would never hear Queen. So it kind of put Queen back in the forefront, so.
Yeah. Well, I started listening to Queen again. I dug out all my old records, and I'd not listened to them for a little while, actually. And it was weird, this, because I listened to the Live at Wembley album a lot as a kid, as I said, but I'd never watched it. I'd never seen the visuals. So I bought on eBay the DVD for about £3 and got it last year and watched it. I actually watched it with my dad at the home. We watched it, and it was a really kind of cool experience to watch the visuals with it. And I was like, oh my God, Freddie Mercury is just on a different level, isn't he, to everybody else? I mean, my favourite frontman is Bon Scott, but, you know, Freddie Mercury, very different type of frontman. But yeah, just wow.
How he could control the crowd, it was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't do that. I tend to just be like, calm down, you know?
Calm down.
It's, yeah, gosh.
Like, he's the only one who can, like, swear at the crowd and make them cheer.
Yeah, the bit when he does the hey yo,
and then he's like, "Fuck you,"
yeah. I mean,
and
it's
then
like
the crowd cheers.
when we were on tour last year, when that was the film had come out, we played at this festival in Brazil, and it was the largest crowd I've ever played to. There's about 7,000 people watching us, and I did the. I mean, they couldn't really. I mean, I'm sure some of the audience could, but I was speaking English all the time, so a lot of it was lost in translation what was happening. But I did the Freddie Mercury thing, and oh my God, they were singing it back. They were doing the and I was like, I turned around to Felipe, my drummer, and I was like, oh my God. So they understood the Freddie Mercury reference. Wow.
Yeah, I think Queen and I think just rock music in general is very popular in South America.
Yeah. We had a lot of people coming to the shows with, AC/DC t-shirts on and stuff. And we played a lot of venues down in Brazil where, they'd have framed Zepp artwork and that kind of stuff. And I do think that there is a certain truth to say that in England at the moment, that it's not as appreciated as it once was. Yet when we go to Spain and tour, those venues are packed and people love it. They just want to hear rock and roll. Whereas the UK, I think the audience is coming back. Actually, they're rediscovering it, and stuff like the Queen film has obviously helped. But I do sometimes feel like saying, look, this is our heritage. We've kind of cultivated this music. Get out there and support it. And so, yeah, going to Brazil, wow. And we should have actually just got back from our second tour, but we're hopefully going next September now. So we'll see what happens with that.
Very exciting.
And I'll be doing the Freddie Mercury impersonation then as well.
Oh, good. That's always fun.
Yeah, although I don't think I can do the strutting across the stage.
No, that's uniquely Freddie Mercury.
I think so. Best left alone.
Well, is that a Kiss shirt? I can't really tell.
This is an AC/DC.
Oh, AC/DC. Okay.
Yeah,
I could only see the lightning thing. Kind of looked like the S in the Kiss logo.
Yeah, it's a Hell's Bells one.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. I've got a large array of band t-shirts and vests that I've collected over the years, and I can't help but purchase more and more of them. But then when I go on tour, I tend to buy t-shirts when I go around and stuff, and I sort of buy hats. I've got a large collection of hats, and they're almost like mementos of where we've been on tour. So I've sort of missed out that element this year, but I've just been buying stuff online instead. So yeah, anyway, I've got a lot of AC/DC t-shirts. Actually, I'm actually wearing AC/DC socks today. I think I must be in the mood for their new album, which
oh yeah, their new song is really cool.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? It's it's coming out the same day as our single as well. I'm sure it's all those AC/DC fans will be tuning into my video going out that morning as well.
They should. They should link up.
Yeah, but I'm hoping my vinyl will arrive on the day. I've ordered the new AC/DC on vinyl, so yeah, looking forward to it.
Oh yeah, I love vinyl. It just has a better sound to it. And
yeah,
I just enjoy the experience of listening to vinyl, just putting it on and then just kicking back, relaxing.
I think what happens when I listen to digital music or CDs or whatever is I get distracted, and I find myself suddenly looking at my phone and answering messages, and it's weird because actually being a musician, you spend a large proportion of your time playing your instrument and performing or whatever, but you do spend a lot of time doing networking, doing admin, doing all that kind of stuff, and I do find it happens so easily that I get distracted. But when I listen to vinyl, it's almost like the event of listening to it, picking up that slab of wax and looking at the artwork as well. I mentioned artwork earlier on, and I was listening to I've got like Neil Young's performance series live albums, which I've sort of taken as inspiration. We did some bootleg series live albums earlier on this year to bring in a bit of income when we lost the tour. But with the Neil Young stuff, I sit there and I want to hold the vinyl cover and I want to engage with the music. And you're right, it does sound better. There's lots of people that go, oh, it doesn't really matter, but it does. If you compare it to vinyl, I hear it when I get my own records on vinyl, and that to me, it sounds like it sounded in the studio when I was recording it. Whereas I listen to it on Apple Music or Spotify or whatever, and it's like
it's too compressed, right?
Well, it's like when I make a drawing, it's like seeing that drawing. That's the vinyl, seeing the real drawing. But then, if you took a photocopy of the drawing, that would be the Spotify version, if you know what I mean. So. I'm with Neil on this. Neil Young, who he's a big vinyl fanatic, isn't he? So the only thing is it costs more to get things produced on vinyl, which I think sometimes people don't realise how much extra it costs, because it's you're paying for a totally separate master of the audio to get it produced, and then obviously different artwork, and then the cost of getting the physical stuff done. But we do all right. Like our fans tend to, they buy the vinyl, so it's not a risk to get it manufactured. So yeah, love it. We actually did an album in lockdown that we got printed on this sort of psychedelic purple and black vinyl that looks like it looks like Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Actually, it's like you want to bite into it. But yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, actually, here in Boston, there's still quite a few record stores running, and they're always filled with young people. So I think vinyl is starting to become popular again. Yeah,
hopefully. I think when I was a teenager, nobody was buying vinyl. It was like I bought loads of Zeppelin vinyl for about £5 each. It was just no one wanted it, and all those people that flogged their vinyl back in the sort of early 2000s are probably
regretting it now.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, I got rid of all this vinyl that was now worth an absolute fortune. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the circle of life.
Yeah, they can give it to me, actually. If no one wants their vinyl, they can just send it to me.
Well, very cool. Well, thanks again, Jack. I had a great time chatting with you.
Yeah, it's been cool.
And hoping for the best. And again, can't wait to hear the rest of the album.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thanks so much for your time. It's been a real laugh chatting to you, and yeah, hopefully speak again at some point.